What's going on, guys? In this video, we're going to talk about one of my favorite studies that I heard on the Andrew Huberman podcast, probably like 4 or 5 years ago. And it made me understand why exercise is so important for dopamine and dopamine production and all these things. It's very, very cool. And hopefully this has the same impact on you as it did me. All right. So the dopamine rat study, okay? Why motivation matters. And I'm going to read this out because it's, for me, I'd ramble on, but this does a really, really good job of explaining why exercise matters when it comes to dopamine. So researchers once ran a remarkable experiment that showed just how essential dopamine is, not just for pleasure, but for motivation. The setup: scientists at a University of Connecticut and other research labs studied two groups of rats: normal rats with functioning dopamine systems and dopamine depleted rats. These rats had their dopamine receptors in key areas of the brain, specifically the nucleus accumbens and the striatum, blocked or destroyed. Then the researchers placed both groups of rats in a cage with food located just a few inches away, literally one rat length from where they were resting. The results: the normal rats quickly moved over and ate the food. The dopamine depleted rats, on the other hand, didn't move at all. And this is where it was like a light bulb went off for me. It is like the normal rats ate the food and they were fine, and they were able to move towards the food and eat the food. But the rats that didn't have any dopamine receptors didn't move to go get the food. And it was literally one rat length away. All right. And they were starving. They were really hungry. And so it didn't matter how hungry they were. They didn't have any dopamine to allow them to go get the food. They didn't lose the ability to eat or enjoy food. If the food was placed directly into their mouths, they would chew and swallow. So that goes to show you that just mentioned if the food was actually brought to them, they would still eat. All right. So dopamine's not just about pleasure. It's about motivation. But they had no drive to take action to getting the food, which is the most important thing. Most times we have to take action to go do something to exercise. We call that exercise, but it's actually just taking action. So what does this mean? This study revealed something critical. Dopamine isn't about pleasure. It's not just about pleasure. It's about motivation and the pursuit of a reward. Without dopamine, the rats knew food was there and wanted the reward on some level, but they lacked the internal drive to act. At the same time, it's the same system that fuels human behavior, from getting out of the bed to going to the gym to chasing big goals. So that's so important to understand. And so we have to understand that our dopamine receptors in our brain and our body are ultra important. And then also producing dopamine is very important because it motivates us to want to do more. All right. And a lot of, people can take advantage of these dopamine receptors in your brain, or dopamine that you have, and that also can be very beneficial for you. Okay. Why does this matter? When dopamine signaling is low due to stress, poor sleep, or inactivity, we lose the motivation to move, even when we know movement would make us feel better. So I want you to understand, that is so helpful for me to understand. Is it's good to know, even though, sometimes we don't want to move, we don't want to do something, that's human nature. All right. That means our dopamine levels are lower. And if we want to increase our dopamine levels, we have to move. We have to take that first step. Exercise boosts dopamine release and receptor sensitivity, starting that motivation reward loop. So, and that's the most important thing you have to take away from this is you're rarely are you going to just kick into action and be like, oh, I'm motivated, I'm going to go to work out. No. A lot of times people in the beginning will have this spark of motivation because they're like, I want to lose 50 pounds or something. And so they're like, I'm going to go to the gym, and so that fear kind of kicks in. But over time, it's more of, hey, when I start working out, that's when I'm actually going to start feeling good and glad I worked out. That's why movement creates momentum. Each small bout of activity feeds the same system that helps you stay consistent and driven. Takeaway message. You can use this line. The rats didn't starve because they couldn't eat. They starved because they couldn't start. Dopamine isn't about pleasure, it's about pursuit. And movement is one of the most powerful ways to start that pursuit system in your brain. All right, so that's it. This was a really, really fun study to hear back in the day. Like I said, like 4 or 5 years ago when I first started listening to Andrew Huberman. And it really clicked for me because I originally, the first app that I created just a taking pictures of food app. And it made me have to understand that it's actually the movement that motivates us to want to do better things. All right. taking pictures of food are super important and understanding what you eat is super important, but you're actually probably going to eat better if you're doing more exercise and moving and doing all those things. So it was a really interesting thing that kicked in for me. And that's why we built FlyFit the way we do, is because it's more of an exercise app, and we can still take pictures of our food in the app, but we built it around movement because we know that's the most important thing when it comes to keeping and staying motivated. So that's all I got. Hopefully you found that study as interesting as I did, and go tell everybody you know, because it's super important for people to hear. And just because it was done with rats doesn't mean it doesn't work on us. So that's all I got, guys. Thanks for watching. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. Get after it.